Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.
Hello, I'm Lorene Mills, and welcome to Report from Santa Fe. Our guest today is quite a celebrity in Santa Fe and worldwide, Mr. Forrest Fenn. Thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure, Lorene. Thank you.
Well, you're well known in the art circles and in Santa Fe. You had one of the finest art galleries that Santa Fe has ever known, and you were quite a sophisticated art dealer and collector. But then you wrote a memoir, and I want to show it here, called The Thrill of the Chase. And your life has changed dramatically since that. Tell us how you came to write this and why people are obsessed with it.
Well, The Thrill of the Chase is my 8th book, but I never thought I was a writer, really. I wanted, I wrote my autobiography, but I never did publish it. So I read Salinger's book, Catcher in the Rye, a very celebrated book by everybody thought was a wonderful author. And I said, after I read that book, I said, if this is a good book, I can do that. And so I sat down. Some of my stories I had in my mind, like the story, My War for Me. I wrote that a couple of years ago. But I sat down, and 6 weeks later, I had written that book. And I'm very proud of it. It's kind of personal. I didn't think anybody would want it. My first issues was 1,000 copies because I didn't know what I was going to do with all these books. But it turned out that people liked it, and two weeks later, I published another 3,200 copies.
Well, not only is it a gripping autobiography, a memoir, as you say, but it does turn out the title comes from what you say has been your kind of guiding principle in your life, the thrill of the chase. And you had a crisis, an illness crisis, and a conversation with Ralph Lauren. Tell me how those two things led to the important part of this book.
Well, it seems like all the lines crossed at the same time. In 1988, I was diagnosed with what everybody thought was terminal cancer. I lost a kidney. My doctors told me I had a 20% chance of living 3 years. And about that same time, Ralph Lorene, who had been an old client of mine and friend for many years, was in my house and looking at some things that I had. And he said, I want to buy that. And I said, Ralph, I don't want to sell it. He said, well, you can't take it with you. And I said, well, Ralph, I can't take it with me. I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
And we laughed about that. But I started thinking about that afterwards, and I got sick. And, if you got to go, I decided I was going to take some of it with me. That's when I decided to buy that beautiful treasure chest. I gave $25,000 for the treasure chest. And I started filling it up with wonderful things, gold coins and gold nuggets and pre-Columbian gold and necklaces and lots of rubies and emeralds and diamonds and 2 Ceylon sapphires. And I just said that if I've got to go, I'm going to take this with me. I thought I was going to die. And I had an elaborate plan that I'm not ready to talk about, but I really ruined the story when I got well.
I'm very grateful that did not have the anticipated ending. So now you have influenced other writers. I just want to show your friend Douglas Preston, a wonderful writer, New York Times top of the best-selling list, wrote this book, The Codex, roughly based on a possible scenario that you had sketched out in your own life.
I gave that idea to Doug many years ago, and I thought it was a good idea. I wanted Doug to write The Thrill of the Chase for me. It was my story, and he took the story and changed it around some, took it to the Amazon jungle, and he wrote The Codex, was a best-selling book. Doug is one of the great writers, I think.
I think he is too. But not only Doug has been influenced by you, since in the last time that we have done our interview, you have been in the United Airlines Magazine, Huffington Post, the Associated Press, Newsweek, the Daily Beast calls you a real-life Indiana Jones. I mean, everywhere I go, because people know we've spoken on air many times. They say, "What's the latest with Forrest?" So, what is the latest? Give us an update.
Well, I look around, I wonder who they're talking about, because I don't see myself in all of these things, and I think that's the way I am. I mean, one thing led to another. People liked my book. Last week I passed 15,000 emails in my inbox. It's hard to keep up with the stuff that's happened. Every writer thinks their book is the world's greatest, but rarely does somebody light the fuse that really makes it be that way.
Well, you have lit the fuse, and in some way there have been unintended consequences, because in the last 6 months there's been a Texas woman on the treasure hunt who got lost in Bandelier, had to be rescued. There was a gentleman over in Pecos who dug up underneath an iron cross, a descanso, and then it turned out that it's illegal to dig on. And one major thing, it's not even a hidden clue. You never said it was buried.
I said that I hid the treasure somewhere in the Rocky Mountains north of Santa Fe. That's not to say that it isn't buried. It's just that I didn't want to say that it was.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, so it turned out the Forest Service and other government agencies that have had to step up and say, if it's on federal, state, county, or city land, it's ours. And so I don't know if you can say that it's on private land or not.
I think they overcooked that story a little bit.
Yeah.
Here's a man that dug a hole 18 inches deep and 9 inches wide, and it made the New York Times.
Yeah.
It made NBC News. It made the headlines in the paper. Please tell me what's going on here. I can't believe that they would prosecute somebody that dug a hole 18 inches deep.
It's because you've tapped into this passion for mystery and for treasure hunts and pirate booty, all these things. People, you have just tapped into a vein not of gold, but of magic and mystery that people are really hungry for.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I've lived my life like that, and it's the thrill of the chase. I've had so much fun for the last 70 years collecting things. One of my reasons for hiding that treasure chest was to give somebody else the same opportunity that I've had all these years.
Well, there have been some unintended consequences. You've had stalkers. You've had people digging in your neighbor's yard. Is that true? You've had threats, enticements, intimidation, and you just put out this magical, wonderful thing to share the thrill of the chase.
But you've named 3 or 4 instances out of the 30,000 people that are out there looking.
Yeah.
There are always exceptions. And I applaud these people that are in the chase. They get their kids off the couch, out of the game rooms, and away from their little texting machines, and they're out in the mountains smelling the sunshine. I think that's a wonderful byproduct of this book.
I've read some of those emails, and they say, one of them said, my dad and I weren't very close, but we decided we'd drive to New Mexico and spend a weekend looking for the treasure. And it was the bonding experience of their life. They were away from...
I did not anticipate that, but I probably have 5,000 or 6,000 emails where people have said, Mr. Fenn, we know we're not going to find your treasure, but I want to thank you for getting me and my kids together as a family out into the woods. And it's very rewarding to me.
Well, we'll come back. Well, tell me about some of the other emails, too.
Well, of all the emails I've received, there are some people that are mad at me. The clues are not explicit enough. This one man says, I want to know where the treasure chest is, and I want to know right now, in big, bold letters.
Well, that defeats the thrill of the chase. And now I will tell our readers they can go online and find this. They can buy this book, this beautiful Thrill of the Chase, at Collected Works in Santa Fe. And you have a very beautiful poem in which the clues are hidden. I have advanced degrees in literature, and I knew after reading that poem that I was not going to find the treasure from that poem. but you've had cryptographers, you've had code specialists, you've had psychics, you've had all kinds of people trying to decipher the clues.
You just described the American people.
Yeah.
We're a diverse group, and everybody has a different opinion, and it's wonderful to see what these people are doing.
So you are also leaving other vestiges of your life in these bells. So I want you to tell me about the bells a little bit. We have one here.
Well, I talked about that at some length in my book. Why is it that we study history, we know a lot about the past, but we don't know anything about the future? And seemingly we have no influence on the future. Well, I found that, in my opinion, to be unsatisfactory. So I started making bells, and I have quotes around the edge of my bell. I sign all of them and put the date on them. And I've taken 8 of these things out in different places around New Mexico, and I've buried them 4 feet deep, 3 to 4 feet deep, so that a metal detector cannot find these bells. Maybe in 1,000 years, a machine can find these bells. But I have another, I think, 28 bells that I'm burying. Not only bells, but I have bronze jars that have screw-on lids. So I've written a 20,000-word autobiography, and I put my autobiography in those jars and screw the lid on real tight, and I bury those. My philosophy is that I am influencing the future. 1,000 years from now, when somebody's building a footing for a house and they turn up one of those bells and read that autobiography, they're going to think, God, here's a guy that wrote that thing 1,000 years ago. Isn't this interesting?
Now, most municipalities and schools, they will bury a time capsule with everything that's happening then. You're sort of putting a time capsule, but with a touch of the infinite, because some of the things that you have inscribed on the bells are things like, ring the bell loudly, for he who dies with over $50 is a failure.
That's an Errol Flynn quote.
And an Albert Einstein quote, imagination is more important than knowledge. I think that's what you have on there.
But I altered it a little bit.
Better.
Imagination is better than knowledge, and I misspelled knowledge.
Another one that I just love, if you should ever think of me 1,000 years from now,
please ring my bell so I will know. And 1,000 years from now, Lorene, when somebody digs that bell up and rings it, I'm going to know.
You're going to know. You're going to know. Well, we'll do insert a couple of close-ups of the bell. It's beautiful. The sound is beautiful. And I think the sound has a magical quality to it.
Well, I make these things out of wax, and I take them to Shidoni Foundry in Tasuki, and they cast them for me. I probably made, I want to think, 40 of these things. And I have another 28 that I'm going to bury. I've buried 8 so far. If I can live long enough, I'm going to bury all of them.
You don't actually dig the 4-foot hole yourself, do you?
Sure I do.
Well, you're very fit, Forrest.
I don't want anybody to know where they are.
Oh, that's right. Well, now that's the other question that people are always asking about the treasure. Who else knows where it is? And what's your mafia quote?
2 people can keep a secret if one of them is dead.
Yeah, okay.
The fact is there are no secrets. There are just some stories that just haven't been told yet.
Yeah. And how will you know? The other question people always ask is, how will you know if it's been found?
The type of guy that's going to find that treasure chest is the type of guy that can't keep it quiet. That's my theory. And I think that theory will hold, but who knows? I mean, we're a very diverse population. Everybody has a different idea. Whoever finds that treasure chest, the IRS is going to want their part of it.
Well, we're speaking today with the treasure hider and definitely a guru to many, many treasure seekers, Mr. Forrest Fenn. Now, at one point you said, and it's written on one of your bells, it doesn't matter who you are. It only matters who they think you are. So, Forrest, who are you, and who do people think you are?
I hope nobody ever finds out.
Ah, the real Forrest Fenn.
I think, I don't know that I'm different from anybody else, but I can look at myself and look at what I've done, and I tell myself I'm a number of different people. And I think that's good. I was a fighter pilot. I was an art dealer. I don't know that I've done more things than other people have done, but I know that I've enjoyed what I've done, and it's all part of the human makeup, I think. If you haven't been consumed by something in your life, then I think you deserve another turn.
Well, in your biography, your memoir, you talk about you flew how many fighter missions in Vietnam?
I flew 328 combat missions in Vietnam.
And once or twice you were shot down.
I shot down twice.
And you described this extraordinary experience that you had being shot down in this little valley with a waterfall and tripping over something.
I tripped over a grave marker. It was a stone grave marker about 14, 15 inches wide. It was face down. And I didn't know what it was really, except there were a lot of aluminum grave markers around in the tall grass where I tripped. And I turned it over, and there was an inscription on it, a French soldier's name. And then in English it said, "If you should ever think of me when I have passed this veil and wish to please my ghost, forgive a sinner and smile at a homely girl." Wow. And one thing led to another. I came home 2 days later, and I didn't think much about it because the homecoming and being missing in action, those things took some of my time. But the secret of that thing crept back into my mind, and it changed my life over a period of the next couple of years.
And I can certainly see that the bells are a direct result of that experience. Mm-hmm. Except you haven't urged anyone to forgive a sinner or smile at a homely girl. But we will take that to heart.
Okay.
Now, you say that you're writing a sequel.
I'm writing a book called Too Far to Walk.
Isn't that a line from the poem?
No.
No.
But it's the theory. It is a line from the poem, as a matter of fact, yeah. And I'm tying. This is kind of a sequel to my memoir, but I'm picturing a lot of vintage photographs, and I'm writing lengthy captions. One caption is a page and a half long, so it's kind of a homespun, human interest thing, like my memoir, I think.
So you'll write a little story almost about a photograph.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. When will it come out?
I hope to be in. Well, we're designing it now. I haven't really finished writing it, but my designer is already working on it. I hope to be in print this summer.
Well, I hope you print enough, because the history of the thrill of the chase was that in January, they were back ordered by 4,000 books.
Collected Works Bookstore has sold 20,000 copies of my memoir.
And then you recently reprinted 15,000?
No, I think 8,200. But
yeah.
3 weeks before that, we printed 7,700.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just, people, it's something people give each other as a gift. It does light that passion for mystery and for the thrill of the chase in all types of people.
Well, a lady asked me, she said, "Miss Fenn, who is your audience for this book?" And I said, "My audience is every redneck in Texas that's lost his job but has a pickup truck, a wife and 12 kids, and has an adventurous spirit. That's who I wrote it for. Put some gas in a pickup truck, grab your sleeping bag, and strike the trail." And I think 40,000 people have done that. And over spring break, we had 6,000 people in Santa Fe as a result of the book. And this summer, I expect, who knows, 30,000, 40,000 people, probably.
And you've been on Good Morning America and the Today Show, big national morning shows with a huge audience, and you've been revealing some clues. Some of these clues, Forrest, are you're not giving a lot away in these clues. What do you say? if you're looking in the grizzly bear, make sure the grizzly bear is not in there. Now, that's not quite a clue.
If you're looking in a cave, be sure the bear's gone.
Yeah.
Well, that's a real good clue. You should observe that.
That's true. That's true. But so in Santa Fe, we run into people who say they're here for the treasure. And surprisingly, on email and on Facebook, there have been people who have announced, don't worry, I've already found it. But if you give me X amount of money, I'll split it with you. Or they say, Forrest, you better go see if it's still there. And I'm sure they're waiting to follow you to go.
Well, I've had 31 people tell me that they have found it and it's in their possession. And I ask them, well, will you sell that one bracelet back to me that was in the treasure chest? And they say, what bracelet? This one lady, she says she knows exactly where the treasure chest is, but her truck is broken. She wants to know if I will drive her out to where the treasure chest is.
Now that's chutzpah. Now that is chutzpah.
But that's thinking, you know.
Well, she doesn't know what she's up against here. I think you once said that you wanted your epitaph to be, now this could have changed, I wish I could have lived to do the things I was attributed to.
One thing that I've enjoyed in my life is that I've been accused of a lot of things. Some of them I've done, most of them I haven't. But those that I haven't done, I still aspire to.
Well, you recently had a book signing at Collected Works, and you had, to assist you in the question and answers, you had two of our finest writers, Doug Preston and Michael McGarity. And they have each seen the treasure. That's something that people have always asking, well, how do we know there's even a treasure? And you have insulated yourself from accusations that you only made up the treasure thing to sell books, because you give a percentage of the profits to a children's cancer organization or some cancer benevolent fund.
That's right, but I gave all of the books to the Collected Works bookstore.
Ah.
I don't make a penny on the book. I don't even get my publication costs back.
Ah.
Because I didn't want anybody to say that the treasure story is a hoax to sell books. They've sold 20,000 books at $35 a book. Amazon buys books from the Collected Works for $35 and sells them for $45, and they were 4,000 backed up when the book went out of print.
As a fan of independent bookstores, I'm very happy to hear that. And Collected Works is one of the finest bookstores in Santa Fe.
It's a great organization.
Yes. So people they're tuning in right now, and they're wondering, well, are we going to get any more clues or advice? At this point, I think that people who come to New Mexico who don't know the terrain can be tricky, and there are temperature gradients. You can come out in shorts in a summer day, and by night it could dip down to freezing. So can you, in the interest of human kindness, give some warning to people who are coming here, hopefully just going to trip over the treasure they think, but give some common sense advice. I'm not even asking for clues.
Well, New Mexico is no different from Colorado and Montana and Wyoming and Utah and Idaho. It's the Rocky Mountains, and there are certain rules that you need to observe when you go into the forest. There are mountain lions, there are bears, and there are porcupines, there are skunks, and it gets cold at night, and you can fall over a rock. But the American people should not have to be told those things. And when you walk into the forest, you can take one look. And I remember the first time I went to Alaska fishing. I got off the plane and I looked around and I said, the human being is not supposed to be here.
Especially with mosquitoes this
water,
size.
Yeah, the mosquitoes carry you away in the water every place. And to me, it was a foreboding. I love to fish up there. But people should use... I think you need to use more caution in the summertime than you do the wintertime. Santa Fe is 2,000 feet above Denver. I mean, this is a high desert. It gets hot in the summertime, particularly if you're in a desert. You need a lot of water. It gets cold at night. It may be 90 degrees in the summertime, but you need a jacket at night. But I think most people know that. There are always some that don't, and they learn the hard way.
That's our practical physical level advice, but There's such a metaphysical level, such a spiritual level to this. And one of them is that even though everyone wants the treasure, it can be the journey, can be the goal itself, not only the treasure. The journey itself could be the treasure. Can you speak?
There's a quote in the new book on Joe Devine. They never knew that it was the chase they sought and not the quarry.
Well, there it is.
The fun is in doing it. I can't remember how many times that could hardly wait in Yellowstone to go trout fishing on the Madison River, the Gallatin, the Firehole, the Gibbon, the Yellowstone, and I'd rush out there, and it was so beautiful. I'd just sit under a tree for an hour just watching the osprey catch fish, and it's so wonderful to be out in the mountains. And I would urge parents. We have a problem in this country with our youth. We're obese. We sit on the couch too much. We're in a game room. Our youth today, our teenagers today, are going to be the president one of these days. Our congressmen, our senators, and we're not doing enough to groom those people.
Well, there's a movement actually called the Last Child Left Outside, because kids are now they're frightened. They've seen so many scary movies that take place in the deserted cabin that they can't experience the peace and the glory that is nature without seeing the human footprint everywhere. They actually respond with fear.
There's so much to be learned. I was talking to a man the other day by email because his kids said that they knew everything there was to know because they lived outside so much. So I asked him, I said, which direction do ants circle when climbing a tree in the southern hemisphere, and why? They didn't have a clue.
Well, I must demand the answer.
It's Coriolis force. Coriolis force is the force that's equal and opposite to the rotation of the Earth. That's why it's easier for you to turn left at the corner in your car than it is to turn right. That's why people in London drive on the left side of the street. In New York, they drive on the right side of the street.
Well, you are a veritable font of wisdom and mystery and a life really well lived. I want to show our audience again this book. It's called The Thrill of the Chase, a memoir by Forrest Fenn. I also you have so many other books. I couldn't bring them all, but this is one of your masterpieces, The Secrets of San Lzaro.
This is the record of my archaeological excavations at San Lzaro Pueblo.
And look at that mask, that incredible mask.
Those are the only
there.
two prehistoric Kachina dance masks ever found.
Well, we have a lot to learn from you, and we've run out of time. So I want to thank our guest today, Forrest Fenn. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's always good to see you, Lorene.
It's always wonderful.
Thank you.
And it's a pleasure to see you, our audience, today on this special edition of Report from Santa Fe. We'll see you next week.
Report from Santa Fe is made possible in part by grants from the members of the National Education Association of New Mexico, an organization of professionals who believe that investing in public education is an investment in our state's economic future, and by a grant from the Healy Foundation, Taos, New Mexico.